D&D number 12, Feed My Sheep in Jesus' Name. Chapter 23. It's December 2nd, Monday evening, Tanner home, Pine Forest, Georgia. Hey, Dad. Hey, Rose, Lily said as they came into the kitchen through the garage door. Hello, Keegan answered. Where's my car? Gabe, Taylor, and Daisy took it to go take care of the dogs. Keegan nodded. Has everyone eaten? Yes, sir, and I was just wrapping up these 2 plates with your dinner. Are you ready to eat? I'll warm them up. Yes, thank you, he said as Rose went to get silverware and drinks for herself and her father. Where's your mom? She's upstairs. She was very tired, and Gentian was fussy, and Iris decided to have a breakdown. Keegan sighed. What did she break down over? Over wanting Mom to read to her and no one else. Okay. She's feeling a little displaced. So where is Iris now? Well, Gabe asked her if she wanted to go with him and Taylor to see the puppies, and she cheered right up. He smiled. Of course she did. Well, as soon as I finish eating and the others get back, let's have family prayer and bunk down. I have a lot to do tomorrow. Anything I can help with? I have the day off from the inn. What were you going to do if I didn't need you? She shrugged. Well, some laundry and get more of the Christmas totes out for Mom and let her order me around where she wants everything. He nodded. You do that. If I need help, I'll get your brother or Nolan. Most of what I have to do tomorrow has to do with work. Oh, well, sorry, I'm not of any use there. None of you are useful there because it's my job, not yours. Just like I wouldn't be useful to you in the kitchen. She smiled. Sure you would, Daddy. Excuse me. Sure you would, Daddy. You could be my taster. He smiled and nodded. Oh, that would be an awesome job. Lily placed the plates in front of her father and rose. Hey, big sis, you doing okay? She smiled and nodded. Hey, Lily, yes, and thanks for asking. I'm okay. Jericho is okay. I'm just tired. Well, stress will do that to you, Lily said. Keegan quickly blessed the food, and he and Rose sat quietly eating. It'd been a hard and stressful day. Rose, are you still planning on doing the shoot on Wednesday? Keegan asked. She sighed. Goodness. She sighed. I don't want to do it, but Twin Wave is depending on that holiday campaign for their biggest sales yet, and I don't feel right leaving them in a lurch. Well, I agree with you. I'm just asking because I have to arrange security. Both Jericho and CJ were going to be there to handle your protection, but both are out of commission, and I don't want Mike Moreland to put one hand, not even one finger, on Daisy. He doesn't even know which one of them is Daisy, Rose said. Well, I don't want him mistaking me for Daisy, Lily put in. Keegan nodded. I will arrange some security. Also, I mentioned the shoot to Ricky, and both he and Bree are interested in seeing how Mike handles this kind of thing and how he handles himself, given what I've told Ricky about Mike. So they want to come watch the shoot? Yes, but discreetly. Rose smiled. Well, it's kind of hard for 2 very well-known movie stars to go anywhere discreetly. Let's see how they do it, Keegan said with a smile. Rose gave a soft laugh. This should be interesting. They finished their meal just as Gabe, Taylor, Iris, and Daisy came back. Daddy! Iris yelled as she ran toward her father, her arms outstretched. He scooped her up and sat her on his lap. Hey, my little flower, he said softly and kissed her cheek. Did you see the puppies? Yes, and they are very cute. Almost as cute as me. Gabe said so. Keegan chuckled. Daisy said we can have a puppy when they get old enough. If it's okay with you and Mommy. Can we, Daddy? He sighed. Well, if you have a puppy, it has to be taken care of. You have to play with it and feed it and take it out for a walk and wash it and train it. Can you do all of those things? She frowned. Oh, maybe not all of it. Can you help me? We'll all help, he said. How about I take care of you and you take care of the puppy? She frowned. Okay. He hugged her tight. Baby girl, you know I love you so much, right? Yes. You know you're very important to me, right? Yes, Daddy, and you're important to me too. Do you know that Mommy and I love you and the new babies too? She scrunched up her face as she thought, I love the new babies, too. I'm glad you do, because you're their big sister. I know. Okay, so you know how all of your big sisters help you and take care of you and teach you things? Yes. Well, that's what you have to do with your new baby brother and sister. She nodded. I will. I sang Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star to them. Well, that's good, baby girl. That's exactly what I'm talking about. But right now, they don't even know how to talk. But they will learn how to talk, and then you really can teach them how to sing songs. How will they learn how to talk? Well, they learn a little bit every time you talk to them. It might seem like they don't understand what you're saying, but the more you talk to them, the more they start to understand how to talk. I will talk to them a lot. Wonderful. But I just want you to remember that we all love you so much, and you are very special to us. She smiled. I love you too, Daddy. Rose smiled. I love you too, Daddy. Me too, Daisy said. Me too, Lily said. I'm in, Gabe said. Taylor smiled. I love all of you. Rose texted Vi and ask her when she'll be home, please. I'm tired and I want to get some rest, and that won't happen while she's out. Rose nodded and pulled out her phone. And where's Heather and Nolan? They're back in the den having a serious discussion. Keegan nodded. Rose looked up. Vi says she's on the way home. Good. I'm going to go check on your mom. When Violet gets home, we'll have a prayer and hit the sack. Who wants to help Iris get ready for bed? I'll do it, Taylor volunteered. Iris cheered and jumped off her father's lap and grabbed Taylor's hand, and they headed upstairs, and Gabe tagged along behind. Keegan headed upstairs too and went to his room. He stood in the doorway gazing at his wife as she sang softly to Isaiah, slowly rocking back and forth. She finally gently laid him in his bassinet. She looked up at her husband and smiled. Hey, hon, she whispered. He smiled. Hello, Elizabeth, he said softly. Is everything okay? She came to him. Whenever you're around, everything is absolutely wonderful. He took her in his arms and sighed. I love you, Liz. I'm so grateful for you. I'm grateful for you, Keegan. She frowned. But you look tired. I am. We're going to have family prayer and get to bed. Do you feel like joining us? Of course. Are you tired? Yes. I mean, it's only been a week since I gave birth, but I'm not too tired to pray. I just need a little more time to be back to normal. Honey, you can have all the time you need. How's your back? It's strange, but it doesn't hurt at all. Hey, maybe on Thanksgiving I got healed too. He smiled. Maybe. Sounds like another thing we need to thank God for. She put her arms up around his neck. We are so blessed. We are. Thank goodness you didn't give up on me all those years ago. He bent his head and kissed her. Lizzie sighed. I was so in love with you, I couldn't give up. I also knew you were my one chance for having a mate who could love me and my children. And now look at you, look at us. We have 9 beautiful, amazing, talented, God-loving children. 9, she said softly. I've given birth to 9 children. And yet you're as beautiful as the day I met you. How do you do it? She said, not hardly. She drew a deep breath. But I do want to get back to training. If I can find the time, I want to stay fit. I'll help you find the time. Out of 9 children, we only have 3 that need tending to. We can do this. She nodded. He took her hand and led her downstairs to the den. They were the first ones there. A minute later, Gabe came down with some bed linens and a pillow. What's that for? Lizzie asked. I'm going to sleep on the couch, Gabe said. Unless you're okay with me sleeping with Taylor up in my bed. Keegan rolled his eyes and Lizzie giggled. Sure, honey, go ahead. Gabe's eyes opened wide. She's kidding, Keegan said quickly. Elizabeth, I guess we need to go ahead and order that furniture for the 2 rooms downstairs that we've talked about turning into guest rooms. I'll do it tomorrow. This will be fun. Which 2 rooms? Gabe asked. Well, first, the big one. That's just storage. We need to get rid of most of that stuff. And then Dad says he's going to put 2 new storage sheds in the backyard. One for all the boxes and totes and stuff, and a new one for the yard tools and maintenance stuff. And then the other was the game room that no one ever uses. Gabe nodded. Yeah. Why go down there when we can play games around the kitchen table, which is closer to the food, and the pool table's up here? Right? Lily said as she came into the room. Taylor and Iris came in next, followed immediately by all the others, including Violet. When did you get home? Keegan asked. She smiled. While you were smooching with Mom? How's CJ? He's in pain. I fed him, I helped him get ready for bed, I gave him his pain medication and made sure he had what he needed, but he's going to have a hard time for a while. I might end up staying there with him just to take care of him. Keegan sighed. We'll talk about it. He's incapacitated, Dad. It's not like we can do anything. Keegan rolled his eyes, and Gabe and Nolan both chuckled because they all knew that wasn't exactly true. We'll talk about it, Keegan repeated. Shall we kneel? They all knelt together and held hands. Nolan, would you like to pray? Keegan asked. Thank you, Nolan said. I'm honored. New scene. It is December 3rd, 2:15 a.m., Tuesday morning. Tanner home, Pine Forest, Georgia. Excuse me. I must be getting cold. Taylor knew she was being bad, but she couldn't seem to help herself. It'd been nice sleeping in Gabe's room. The bed smelled like him. It was nice to experience his bed, knowing this is what he felt when he was here, and she was in Cali, and they would talk in the middle of the night. Still, the temptation of knowing that he was downstairs, so close by, she needed to go down and talk to him in person. Until they came to Georgia for Thanksgiving, he'd been staying at her house off and on, and they'd snuck into each other's rooms several times, though they were not trying to do anything other than be close to one another. It was such a comfort to be close to him. It was comforting knowing she could do that. They understood that once they came to Georgia, they would not be able to do it. She would be at the inn or their new home, and he would be at his home. But here they were, finally, in the same house, and it was too tempting. She padded barefoot softly down the stairs in the red flannel pajamas that Daisy lent to her, which were warm and cozy. She carefully passed Mr. Tanner's office, just in case he'd been awakened to have to work in the middle of the night. She knew that happened quite often, but the door was closed and no light was on. Moving past quickly, she came to the den. It was a giant room. A large screen TV was on the wall over top of the fireplace. Opposite that wall was a double large L-shaped sectional sofa. If you were facing the fireplace, to the left of the sofa was Ms. Tanner's new rocking chair, and then a small table, and then an overstuffed wingback chair. And if you were to walk behind the sofa, you would go to the far side of the room, which was almost like another entire room. The wall was lined with bookshelves, and in front of those shelves there was a smaller sofa with tables and lamps on either side, and a coffee table in front of it, and then another large chair. Gabe was currently asleep on the large blue sectional. She crept up close and knelt down on the floor next to him and gently placed her hand on his shoulder. He sighed and reached up and placed his hand over hers. She smiled and he opened his eyes. Hey, Tay, he said softly. She sighed. Oh, Gabe, I needed to hear you say that. Are you okay? Yeah, I'm just feeling lonely. He scooted back against the back of the large sofa and lifted his blanket. Come on up. The relief washed over her. Oh, how she needed to be near him. She immediately climbed up on the sofa and lay down beside him, facing him. Smiling into her eyes, he ran his hand over her face, leaned forward, and kissed her. She sniffed. He frowned. What's wrong, Tay? Nothing. I just suddenly felt like crying. I guess because it's such a relief to be near you. I can't stand being away from you. What am I going to do when we leave on Saturday? He sighed. Well, you know what to do. We've talked about it enough, haven't we? She sighed. Yes. Focus on the present moment. Give the present moment all my energy. It'll make the time go by faster. Right. But still, I understand how you feel, babe, because I feel the same way. I love it when we're together like this. I hate being away from you. Sometimes I think we're too young to feel this way. I think I just want to marry you and be with you every day, every night. But I know we're too young. Are we? He sighed. I think we are. You're still in high school. I haven't even begun my training yet. We have a lot to do. Let's try really hard to do things right. How long? How long what? How long do we have to try? He chuckled. Forever. We have to try to do things right forever. But we don't have to be apart forever. You finish high school. You decide what you want to do with your life, and I already know what I want to do. Okay, what? I want to be your wife and have your children. He drew a deep breath because whenever she mentioned having his children, it always made him want to do what it takes to make that happen. He kissed her again. I love that you want that, but you are young and you might not want that once you've had some time to think about it. So I just want to give you that time. But let's say for a minute that you won't change your mind, that you know what you want to do. Marry me and have my children. How would you do that? What do you mean? What does a wife do? What does a mother do? Gabe asked. Well, a wife is a companion to her husband, and she takes care of the home. And how does she do that? Gabe interrupted. Well, she makes it homey. She keeps it clean. She cooks delicious meals. Do you know how to cook? Some things, but I want to learn more about that. How? Oh, well, maybe taking some cooking lessons, Taylor suggested. He nodded. Good. That sounds like a good idea. And how do you make a home, what did you call it? Homey? She shrugged. You know, like decorate it and make it functional but pretty. Do you know how to do that? Well, I have good taste, I think, but I'd like to learn more about design and efficiency stuff. Good. That sounds like a good idea. And how do you take care of the children? Well, you just do. Or what if they get sick? Or go back to when you're pregnant. How do you stay healthy? Do you know all about nutrition? Do you know how to take care of a kid with an ear infection? Do you know how to take care of a child who is feeling sad or one that's struggling in school? She stayed quiet. He ran his hand over her shoulder, down her back, and pulled her in close. I'm not trying to be mean. And some of those things we learn together as we go, because I don't know them either. But there are things you can do to prepare to be a wife and mother if that's what you truly want to do. So we're not ready yet. We have things we need to do, things we need to learn. And what about dance? Do you want to pursue that at all? It'd be a shame to let that talent go to waste. And on top of all of that, I have to be able to support you and learn how to do that in a way you're accustomed to, which is a very steep hill to climb. I don't care about money. Well, I don't either. I mean, being rich is not my priority, but you'll care when we don't have enough. I have to be man enough to at least work hard and support my family. I have to buy you a home and transportation and keep the power on and buy good nutritious foods for you and the children. You can focus on a career or being a wife or a mother, anything you want to do. But for me, there's no option. There are things I absolutely have to do. God has given me abilities, and I have to use them to take care of my family and support my family. What abilities are you talking about? Well, I'm strong. I'm athletic. I'm a good martial artist. I'm good with guns, and I'm a fast thinker. I have a strong, logical mind. I have a strong faith. God is with me. I have to work hard and not settle. Oh, I want to support you in all of that, Gabe. I know, and it makes me happy, and it makes me try harder and work harder. And I love you, Taylor Kino. You understand me. You get me, and I feel so close to you. And that's exactly how I feel about you. Well, then somehow we'll get through the next little while, and we'll follow the path God has for us. And we'll be so good together. Nothing will be able to stop us. Certainly not a little separation. She sighed. No. A little separation won't stop us, but I still crave being near you. You are like an addiction. I can't get enough. He pulled her even closer and covered her with his body and kissed her deeply. He raised his head and smiled. I feel the same way. I do. But being with you like this is very hard on me. You are just too tempting. Are you saying you want me to go back upstairs to bed? Yes. No. Oh, man, he sighed. No, stay here a few more minutes. She smiled. Okay, just a few more. He nodded. Good talk. She giggled. New scene. It's December 3rd, the next day, 6 a.m., Tuesday morning, Tanner home, Pine Forest, Georgia. Gabriel Tanner. Gabe's eyes blinked open. The voice was soft and stern and masculine. It was his father's voice. He tried to sit up, but Taylor had herself wrapped around him, her head nestled under his chin, her leg thrown up on his hip. He gently moved her leg down and eased himself up and over the back of the couch and stood to face his father. He blinked up at him in the dim light of dawn. His father pointed toward the doorway, turned and headed out. Gabe quickly pulled on his jeans and followed him to his office. Once inside, Keegan closed the door and took a seat behind his desk. Sit down. Gabe sat and drew a deep breath. I'm sorry, Dad. She came down a few hours ago. She was feeling... He trailed off. Sometimes she gets like desperately lonely, almost like panicked. Keegan nodded. Those are the feelings of a child. I get that. I talked her down. He smiled. She would be very unhappy to hear you call her that. Again, childish feelings. And I don't mean that in a derogatory way. I'm only saying that she's young. And one of the things she has to learn how to handle is a separation. If she learns to be clingy and feels like she can't function unless you're near her, then how will she ever mature and grow and take care of your children? Gabe nodded. I understand what you're saying. We need to be mature and take care of our responsibilities. I mean, I understand both sides. That we have to learn to take care of business when we're not with each other. But I also understand how she feels because I'm desperate to be with her too. Because, like, our love is new. And what was I supposed to do? Tell her to go back to bed? Not comfort her? I mean, Dad, you love being with Mom. Yes, but we go through our day taking care of business. But you sleep together every night, and that, like, carries you through. It sort of fuels you for the next day. Keegan sat there smiling. Well said. Gabe smiled. Anyway, our intention was just for her to stay with me a few minutes, but I guess we fell asleep, and I'm sorry. But Dad, don't worry. I am not going to compromise her. I swear. We haven't spent that much time together since we got to Georgia. We've actually been taking care of business. And last night, she said she couldn't resist coming down to see me when she knew I was in the same house. You had to know that's how she would feel when you asked if she could stay the night. Gabe drew a deep breath. I did know. She knew too. We wanted the chance to be together. And when she came down and woke me up, I was all too happy to invite her onto the couch with me. Keegan smiled. Well, anyway, I'm glad you're being honest. Always. Keegan sighed. Really, son, I understand how you feel. When you love someone as much as I love your mother, you want and need to be together. I just don't want you to be tempted beyond what you can resist before you get married, because I don't want you to feel guilty. There are things you can't take back. Gabe nodded. He blinked up at his father. So you don't want me to make the same mistake that you made with me? Keegan looked into his son's eyes. Gabe shrugged. I can do the math. Your anniversary is in January. I was born in June. Keegan sighed. He'd known this talk was coming eventually. Well, first, let me be very clear about this. You were not a mistake. You were a blessing. You were meant to be. That is obvious. You are a favored son of God. The circumstances surrounding your conception were different than circumstances between you and Taylor, because at the time, I was not a Christian. But Mom was, right? Yes, your mom was sweet and pure and holy and faithful. But you can't blame her for giving in to me. It was a hard situation. You've heard bits and pieces of it. We fell in love when she was taking care of me as I recovered from the accident. She was so alone. Her husband was dead. She had 5 babies to take care of. She was struggling financially. Oh, but she was proud. She worked so hard and wouldn't accept help from me. I fully intended to I fully intended to finish my assignment and marry her. If I had done just that, we probably would have waited to consummate our relationship. What do you mean? What did you do? Well, one day I told her we were going to be together soon and be happy, and the next day I made a stupid decision. I decided I wasn't good enough for her. I decided that my line of work made me a monster, and I'd done so many things in the military and in the line of duty in the FBI. You know, horrible things. You mean like killing bad guys? Yeah, like that. You know some of the circumstances. It was the ones that were hand-to-hand combat that were the worst. I didn't want her to know the things I'd done. I didn't want her to see my hand on her and know that the same hand had slit some guy's throat. Gabe nodded. So I left her. At the time, she was in protective custody, and I left her and let her know that I wouldn't be back, even after I finished my assignment. Jody Apple befriended her. She told me later that I completely broke your mom's heart and her spirit. But your mom is so strong. She was not going to just go away and lick her wounds. She decided she was going to get me back. She came to Savannah and confronted me when I was in the hospital after I'd been shot, the night I rescued Jeff. Her intention was to seduce me. She was a strong Christian and knew that she wasn't supposed to have sex outside of marriage, but she felt like it had to be done in order to wake me up. Well, it worked, much too easily, and that, son, is when you were conceived. We talked through the night, and she laid out a perfect argument, and she convinced me that she and I were supposed to be together, that we were good together. That was October. Only a short time later, she told me she was pregnant. We married New Year's Day. You were born on that fateful day in June, and we have been living in bliss the rest of the time. You have been a treasure for us. Special. A light, Gabe. Such a bright light. And as you know, Ricky Kino was moved by the Spirit to speak to me about God, and it was really because of him and his faithfulness in doing the things God moves him to do that I was brought into the fold. Gabe nodded. And because you've taught all of us and given us the best life ever. Because I don't know how I could be happy if I didn't have God in my life. My relationship with him, he fills me with so much joy. Keegan smiled. Right. And now, because Ricky spoke to me and your mom and I taught you, Ricky's daughter is going to have the best man possible to marry her and take care of her and give her babies and teach them. The plans God has for us, it's beautiful the way it all fits together. It all comes together. Gabe nodded as his heart filled with the Spirit and his eyes filled with tears. And Keegan smiled. And I'm so grateful that I hit that deer 19 years ago. It hurt so bad, but coming through that made everything wonderful. It changed my life in ways I never dreamed, and I wouldn't change anything, especially having you. Gabe nodded and sniffed. And Keegan rose. Well, it's been a good talk, but I have to get a move on. There are things that need attention at work, and I need a cup of coffee, and your mom needs breakfast if she's going to keep up her strength to feed those babies all day. It takes a lot of calories to produce milk. Gabe thought about that. Interesting. See, those are things I'm going to need to learn about. For now, you make coffee, and I'll start on Mom's breakfast. Keegan nodded. Thanks, but put on a shirt first. We don't want any chest hairs in the scrambled eggs. Gabe chuckled. New scene. December 3rd, 8:30 a.m., Tuesday morning. CJ's apartment, Pine Forest, Georgia. CJ struggled to get his pants buttoned. He'd been able to get the zipper up, but the button wasn't going to happen. He sighed. He looked up at the soft knock on his bedroom door. Come in, he said. Violet poked her head in. Hey, I'm just seeing if you need any help with anything. He frowned as he tried once more to button his jeans. She came forward. Let me get that for you. No, it's okay. Don't be silly, she said as she quickly buttoned his jeans and smiled. What else? Are you going to wear a shirt? Well, I'm not sure how to get a shirt on over this cast. She pulled a t-shirt from his drawer and approached. Carefully, she worked the sleeve over the cast and then helped to get the shirt over his head, and he pushed his other arm through. There, she said with a smile. Sit down, I'll help you get some shoes on. Sighing, he did as ordered. I think I can actually do this part myself. Well, I'm here, so I can do it much faster, she said. He watched her as she knelt in front of him. She'd braided her long blonde hair into a single braid that ended at her waist. She wore a soft, flowy, casual moss green skirt that came to mid-calf with suede boots that looked like hiking boots and an oversized cream-colored sweater. So feminine, so soft, but no glitz. Her simplicity and femininity stirred him, as usual. She finished tying his shoes and looked up at him with her big blue eyes. You ready for some breakfast? She asked. He nodded. Violet, you don't have to do this. I can take care of myself. You couldn't even button your pants. Well, then I'd just leave them unbuttoned. Well, that's good for today since you're not going to work, but what will you do when you go back to work? He sighed. That won't be for about a week. Maybe by then I'll be able to use my fingers a little bit. Fine, we'll see. But for now, can we just agree that you need my help? He sighed. For now. He smiled at the pout on her face, and she looked up at him. Do you think this takes away from your manhood? He shrugged. Maybe a little. CJ, don't be silly. You are my big, strong man. You are not less in my eyes because you got hurt. You want to be manly? You are manly. Now let me be girly and give in to my need to take care of you. He smiled. What's for breakfast? Well, Lily made up some biscuits this morning, so we have a few of those, and I'm making up some scrambled eggs and some grits and sausage. It's almost ready, so go in and sit at the table. Would you like some coffee or juice? Yes, and yes. He sat at the table and watched the beautiful girl. She finished preparing breakfast. She was so soft, so gentle, so sweet. His mind went to the college professor who'd so casually thought he'd take her virginity. Thank goodness her sister and father acted so quickly. She came forward and placed a plate in front of him and put the silverware on his right side to make it easier for him to pick up. She was so thoughtful. She took her seat. Who's going to bless the food? I will, he said as he bowed his head and gave thanks for the food and for the young woman who'd prepared it and for their lives. And he prayed for Jericho and he gave thanks for his life too. Violet asked if he wanted jelly or honey on his biscuit and prepared it for him. He took a bite and sighed in pleasure. This is so fluffy and perfect. Violet nodded. Lily's just the best. I'm so proud of her. Violet took a bite of her eggs and smiled at CJ. This is nice. He nodded. It's always nice when you're with me. She sighed. So I don't mean to pressure you, but before things happened yesterday, you and I were going to get together and talk. You know, you were going to tell me about Jericho and what happened between the two of you. CJ nodded. Yes, I was. And now you're not? He chuckled. Oh, I still am. When? Now, babe, give me a second. Oh, she smiled sweetly. Okay. Well, while you're thinking about what you have to say and how you're going to say it, tell me this. Why were you and Jericho at that old house yesterday? He nodded. Okay, we'll start there. He looked around. I need my phone. I guess I left it in the bedroom. I'll get it, she said quickly. She rushed into the bedroom, grabbed it off the bedside table, came back to him and set it down next to him. He lifted it and opened the case. Jericho's phone had been shattered. His phone was in an Ameritech military-type case and didn't even have a scratch. He opened his photos and handed the phone to Violet. Scroll through those pics. She oohed and awed over the beautiful scene, trees with the morning mist coming up through them. It was as if they were up in the sky, looking down on a forest on a hill. It was beautiful, and she told him so. He smiled. That was the view from the deck we were standing on. I wanted to talk to Jericho and settle things with him and tell him things I thought he needed to know. It was the only time I could meet with him, and he drove out to Stevens Bluff to accommodate me for that meeting. Why Stevens Bluff? Because I had to meet with the real estate lady. With Miss Marjorie? Yes. She showed me that home. It was the second time I've looked at it. I was going to surprise you, take you on a tour, show you all the potential it had. I don't think I understand. That's because I'm doing this all wrong, all out of order, he sighed. Yesterday, I was going to put a contract on that house and talk to Jericho, then talk to your family, and finally talk to you. I was going to tell you about Jericho, about my family, about everything, and then officially ask you to marry me. She smiled. They had already spoken of their plans to marry many times, but she didn't know they were even close to a proposal. Well, that sounds wonderful, he smiled. Good, because when it happens, I'm hoping you'll still feel that way. I will, but I can't believe you bought a house without me. Well, I never got around to actually telling Marjorie. So if you don't want it, fine, but I thought you would love it, the way it's in the woods, the way the trees make you feel like you're in a tree house. I thought it would be an awesome surprise, but now I'm thinking women don't like that kind of surprise, do they? Well, it's sweet. But yeah, I think a woman would want to be in on a decision to buy a home. Okay, well, then it's good that things happened the way they did. Except for Jericho being hurt. Well, yes, of course. He shook his head. I'd like to go see him today. She nodded. Let's make that happen. But first, CJ, talk to me. He nodded. Okay. Let me begin by telling you that I never had a problem with Jericho. He was my best friend since middle school. We were inseparable. And this was up in Rome, Georgia. Yes. He drew a breath. My family died in a house fire shortly after I graduated from high school. My father, my mother, my little brother, and my little sister. He stopped as the usual emotion clogged his throat. Violet's mouth fell open. He looked at her expression. Did you have no clue? She shook her head. I was going to do some research and look into your family and why you didn't have any contact with them, but Dad said if you wanted me to know, you would tell me, and so I decided to honor you in that way. He smiled. You are such a good, sweet girl. She took his hand. Please go on, but let me ask you. My father knew? CJ shook his head. He knows the official story, but the official story is not the truth. I needed to tell Jericho and your dad, and then you the real story, because Violet, I killed my family. What? Not on purpose, but my actions killed them. She shook her head. No. My father told me that whatever happened in your past, that you didn't do anything wrong. Well, he said that because he doesn't know the truth. If your dad didn't tell you what happened, I'm just curious, what did you think all this time? I thought maybe you were falsely accused of something and your family disowned you. I never dreamed that they died, especially not so tragically, and especially never dreamed that you would think you were the cause. Well, I was. Let me try to explain. He blew out a breath. First, I'll tell you the official story. And then I'll tell you what Jericho told me yesterday. And then I'll tell you what really happened. She nodded and braced herself. All she knew was no way was she going to believe that Carson Josiah Blackman killed his family. December 3rd, 9:30 a.m., Tuesday morning, so still Tuesday morning, Gabe Tanner Community Center, Pine Forest, Georgia. Daisy Tanner glanced at her buzzing phone, stopped working on the computer, and answered. Hey, Brody. Hello, Daisy, he said softly. It's really good to hear your voice. You just heard it last night, and that's not enough, he said. Quite a day yesterday, huh? Yes, but thank God Jericho is going to be okay. I did, just a few hours ago. So how's Georgia? She's doing great. Charlie and Matt and Erilyn are totally in love with her and her puppies, and even though I still want to see them myself, they keep beating me to it. Brody laughed. Are their eyes all open now? Yes, and they're growing and getting so big already. Well, their mom and dad are big. Have you picked out which puppy you want? Yes, and it's a male, and he's black with a few golden patches, and that's what I want to call him. Patches? Yes, or Patch. When he looks up at me, it's with so much longing in those big brown eyes that I'll pick him. I just can't resist. I look at you that same way. She giggled. I can't resist you either, though your eyes are blue. I wish I could bring you home to live with me. He sighed. So, anyway, I'm on my way to class, and I'm about to give my big speech, and I thought I'd call you to get you to help me calm my nerves. Nerves? You didn't seem a bit nervous on Sunday when you spoke. Well, that was in front of people who believe the same things I believe. And that wasn't for a grade. Wasn't it? Daisy said quickly. Brody laughed. Thank you. That helped. Let's pray, Daisy said. I'll do it. She volunteered quickly. Father, Brody's about to give a speech in class, and we don't really care about a good grade, but what we really care about is how what he says affects the teacher and the students. So we pray, Father, that you will fill Brody with your Holy Spirit so that what he says touches the hearts and souls of all those who listen to him. Help him to help all the people in that class today in one way or another. And I said we don't really care about a good grade, but actually he needs a good grade. So first we pray that he will help the people, and second, that he'll get a good grade. Help him to not be nervous, and help him to get grounded, and help him to know exactly what to do and say in Jesus' mighty name. Amen. Amen, Brody whispered. Daisy, you never cease to amaze me. Well, I hope it helps. I already feel better. Thank you for your strength. Thank you for yours. Call me and let me know how it goes. You can depend on it. And that is the end of chapter 23.